This is episode 229.
Yeah, we're doing another lecture series. This is a lecture that was hosted by Tiffany Young of Ducks and Clucks and the Utah Animal Rights Coalition at the Marmalade Library in Salt Lake City, Utah on Tuesday, May 16th, 2017.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining. I have a bunch of pages of notes here, so forgive me if I read them. My name's Tiffany Young. I'm the founder of Ducks and Clucks, a backyard micro sanctuary located here in the Sugar House neighborhood of Salt Lake City. I have been rescuing mostly ducks, geese, and chickens, though a lot of other birds as well, for nearly 14 years now, first in Seattle for about a decade and for 3 years here in Salt Lake City. Before that, I spent 2 summer seasons as a baby bird nursery caretaker at Paws Wildlife Rescue in Linwood, Washington. And I'm here tonight to talk about what you can do if you find a baby bird or other wildlife, a bunny, or anything else that you believe needs help or is injured. There are a lot of kind of angles or different topics we could cover, but I'm going to focus on what we can do here locally in our area to help animals and talk about the wildlife rehabilitation resources available to them here in Salt Lake City area. Oh, too far. Okay. Does this animal really need help? Can anyone guess one of the most common reasons animals end up in the care of wildlife rehabilitators? Anyone? People end up picking them up. Yep, they look like they need help, but they don't necessarily. So it's usually, the most well-meaning people who watch a young animal and think that they need help, but they end up kidnapping them when really their best bet for surviving in the wild is to stay there with their parents. So does this animal really need help is the first question you should ask. And our local rehabilitator in Ogden asks that before you do anything else, if you see an animal you think needs help, call them. It's Wildlife Rehabilitation Center of Northern Utah, based in Ogden. Or you can call Price if they're not answering. The one in Price is called Second Chance. Call them and describe the situation you're seeing, and they can immediately tell you if you need to just leave it alone or if it might be something that you need help with. And then the next thing they ask you to do is to take a picture if it's safe. There are some situations I'll go through later that you'll see are not safe to do that, but they always ask for a pic to see if what they think you're seeing is what they know to be the real situation. So those 2 places, WRC in Northern Utah and Second Chance, are the only 2 licensed wildlife rehabilitators anywhere near Salt Lake City that take a variety of wild species. And I'll talk more about them later. So let's start with baby songbirds. We are right in the midst of baby bird season. Rescue groups are overwhelmed with babies of all kinds. But if you learn the difference between the different stages of baby birds, you can learn a lot about what they might need at those different stages. I should note it's not very easy to identify when you see a little tiny thing on the ground, what you're really looking at without years of experience. So as I just mentioned previously, always see if you can safely get a photo and show it to a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. Hatchlings to the left here, our little guys, are newly hatched baby birds. They rarely have feathers. Their eyes are often still closed. And if they fall out of the nest at this stage, they can be successfully placed back in the nest. There are a couple things to think about. Is the hatchling still warm? Has it been in the mouth of a cat? Is the nest reachable by you? Can you find it? Do you see it? And can you get it back in the nest? One of the first things you should do with these little guys is to, if you can, get it back in the nest if all those criteria are met. Or if you can't, get it on a heating pad on the very lowest setting. These are very vulnerable, featherless little creatures. So get it on a heating pad on the very lowest setting and call a wildlife rehabilitator. Never, this is the biggest thing that happens that people are trying their hardest to help. One of the most common sort of human instincts is to feed it. It must be starving, I'm going to feed it. Actually, it just fell. It might not be starving, so please do not feed it, whatever you do. Baby birds don't need you to feed them. They don't drink water. That's another thing people do. Baby birds do not drink water. So unfortunately, a lot of rehabbers get baby birds in that are aspirating and choking on food and water that people have tried to feed them. So for no reason do that. Definitely call a wildlife rehabilitator first once you get it on a heating pad. The middle kids there, nestlings, They also fall from nests and sometimes get mistaken for their larger cousins, the fledglings. Their eyes are open. They have a lot of little pin feathers coming in all over. But the difference between them and the fledglings is they can't really hop. Fledglings you see hopping around a lot. Nestlings, they kind of look like they're almost ready to go, fully baked, but they're not standing up well. They're not hopping around, and they're not really flying. So again, if you can find the nest, and usually you should look straight up for it because they can't fly, so they usually drop straight down. And if the nest is not straight above, you should consider the fact that they might have been in the mouth of an animal, usually a household cat. If a nestling or any bird has been in the mouth of a cat, that is an absolute 100% needs to be rehabilitated situation. These babies, though, nestlings, if you can get them back in the nest, they do great. They do just fine, and you can watch them from afar. I recommend 30 feet, like really step far back to where you just can observe and wait 20 to 30 minutes and see if a parent's feeding them. And they will often, if you can get them back in the nest, there's often other nestlings in there, and you'll see the parents will just pick feeding right back up if you step away and they don't fear you. It is just sort of an old wives' tale that your scent will scare away the parents and they'll never return. You can wear gloves if you want to, but I would just say wash your hands with soap when you're done, but don't even worry about it. Yeah, I pick them up and jam them in nests all the time, and it's kind of just an old wives' tale that, they'll forever be sworn off the axe smell of cologne that you're wearing or whatever. So don't worry about that. But that brings us to fledglings. These are the most often kidnapped babies that rehabbers receive. They're almost fully feathered. They can stand up and hop around. That's why they look so vulnerable to people, because they don't look quite right. They almost look like an adult bird, but they're not acting the way you see adult birds look. And that's what triggers people to think like this bird must be injured. This is a vulnerable time for them, but there's no better way to ensure their success than to leave them alone with their parents. You can help by keeping dogs, cats, and kids away. These babies are often reported as having broken wings or found alone, when really they're just acting like a fledgling and they don't seem quite right. Cats are especially dangerous to these baby birds and birds in general, killing millions of them each year. Cats are not natural to the environment or the ecosystem, house cats, and can do real harm to the health of bird populations, especially in urban environments. So if you have a cat that must be outside, please keep a bell on its collar, especially in the springtime. It will help alert parents and other birds, and they will tell each other that there's a cat in the neighborhood. And if your cat has caught a baby bird, but it seems okay, it still must get to a wildlife rehabilitator. If it seems all right, if it's been in a cat's mouth, that saliva will kill that bird within a day or so. I have had many baby birds mistaken, as I said, as adults with broken wings. That gets reported. Or they've been attacked and all their feathers have been ripped out, but really it's just a very young bird. So until you're absolutely certain you know what you're looking at and dealing with, always run it by a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. Now, as for how to get them back in the nest, as you were asking, just pick them up very gently and place them back in the nest. Hatchlings and nestlings can only really fall straight down, as I noted, so you'll definitely want to look up. You can use gloves. The idea that parents will reject them is just an old wives' tale. And if you're in the Salt Lake area and that just, you find a baby bird and it seems intimidating, grab a ladder and call me. I will be happy to come over and jam that baby bird back in the nest. That leads us to baby bunnies and fawns. These, just like fledglings, baby bunnies and fawns are often kidnapped by well-meaning people when they should be left alone. Rabbits and deer will leave their babies alone for the entire day. So people will stop and watch when they see it, and they'll wait. And, I've been watching for 3 hours, and the parents never returned, so I'm bringing them to you. And the parents, especially bunnies, will hide them in little burrows in the ground, in the grass, and they're fully furry, so they can keep themselves warm in that little nest that their parents have created. And then their parents don't visit them during the day. They feed them a couple times at night for about 5 minutes each, and they're so nutrient rich. The milk that they're getting is so nutrient rich that is all they need as they grow. And they do that so they don't alert predators to where that nest is. Baby bunnies are well camouflaged in their little nests, and one of their biggest dangers is lawnmowers. Be very careful trimming back fields or overgrown grasses this time of year. Baby bunnies are notoriously difficult to rehab with a very high death rate, which is why rehabilitators, just implore you to please leave them where they are if you are, unless, they have been in the mouth of a cat or a dog or something like that. Fawns, also, they may seem like they stand out with those spots, but those spots for their would-be predators actually camouflage them. Fawns also need to be left alone as their rehab options are pretty severely limited here in Utah. And almost every year someone hand raises a baby fawn around us, making them very friendly and dependent on humans for food and attention. And then when they're grown, their wild instincts kick in and they will take off and start roaming and approach other humans. And they get reported to Utah Department of Wildlife Resources at that point, reported as a nuisance. So definitely try not to ever make a wild animal friendly to humans, because it will result in them, in a short life for them or a dangerous life for them. Then we get to ducklings and goslings. They are everywhere this time of year and can sometimes find themselves in need of help. Mother ducks and geese will build nests in perfect spots, but what they think is perfect may not be very perfect for people. If you find a mother duck or goose in distress, loudly quacking or honking, chances are they have a baby in distress nearby. You can check storm drains or nearby rooftops for babies in need of help. And I have seen several times, if you're gentle and quiet and listen carefully, they will actually walk up to you and ask for you to help them help their babies. So just look around carefully, especially at storm drains. The mother ducks will just be walking around the storm drain, quacking loudly, and they've fallen in. If you find ducklings and are not sure of who the mother is, don't just toss them in a pond with a bunch of different mothers and ducklings. They will not adopt another brood of ducklings. In fact, they will reject them and sometimes even kill them if there's competing food in the area. So if you find, especially one lone duckling, it needs to definitely go to rehab. Goslings, however, sometimes will adopt strays. So if you're in an area, park, where there's multiple families of goslings and geese, usually Canada geese around here, you can find goslings of a similar size, very similar in size, and place them with them and then watch closely, and often they will be adopted. So not with ducks, but definitely with goslings, you can try that out. Unless there's one gosling, and then you should go ahead unless you can't find the parents, and then you should try and get it to a rehabber. This last picture here is on the big guy there is a domesticated super ruined duck, and the little one is a mallard, and the mallard is actually older than the domestic one in this photo. They're both ducklings. They're both a few weeks old, but you can see how much larger the domestic bird has been bred through generations of farmers. They breed them for, meat or eggs or as pets, than a wild bird. People don't often understand this difference between wild and domestic ducks and geese, and wild ducks are very compact little flying machines, as you can see here. They can visit several ponds in a day, forage for food. They can migrate south when it gets cold or when ponds freeze over in the winter. Domestic ducks, unfortunately, are bought at farm feed stores and cannot be legally released to parks. Here in Salt Lake and in Orem and Provo, farm feed stores will not tell you that. They will tell you can buy them and raise them and dump them at a park. They are wrong. They are bred to be too fat to fly. It's called high wing load. I prefer that as a description of myself as well. And they cannot survive without food support. They also cannot avoid predators and off-leash dogs, and they will starve in the winter when the ponds freeze over. So please never buy a duckling thinking you can raise it and release it at a park. Now get into some fun stuff. Keeping an animal overnight. If you have an animal that needs to get to a rehabilitator, sometimes it happens in the evening and they will be closed for the day. You'll need to keep them overnight before you transport them. If that's necessary, here are a few ideas to keep them safe and maximize their chances for successful rehabilitation. I'm going to focus mostly on birds since that's what I'm most familiar with. Tiny baby birds like the little guy, as I mentioned before, need to be kept on a towel-covered heating pad that's set to the lowest setting. You'll want to make sure it's a heating pad that doesn't have one of those auto shut-offs, because you don't want it, turning off 2 hours later and then he gets too cold. For ducklings and goslings and fledglings, I give them a box large enough to have a heating pad covered with a towel or a cloth on half of the area. And I put a little mirror there so they can see somebody like themselves, especially if there's only one. You don't want them viewing you and deciding that they are a people. You want them looking at their handsome self and deciding they are an awesome duck or gosling. And I also put stuffed animals in there. If they have like little arms and stuff, they will actually snuggle under the arms just like a mother's wing in front of the mirror and stare at themselves. So I put the mirror next to the heating pad to sort of get them to stay on there. But I give them room in the area that they can get off that heating pad if it's too warm for them. And they will self-regulate at 1 day old. If they're too warm, they will walk to the cold spot and sit down there. The outlined part in this center photo sort of shows where the heating pad is, even though I have the towel sort of covering the spot. There's a space where that mallard that came in earlier this week could go to get off the spot. The area away from the mirror doesn't have the heating pad. So for both ducklings and goslings that have been handheld for hours by people, if someone calls you and says, can you help transport this tomorrow? And you take it in. Sometimes the problem is ducklings and goslings will peep, 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 and just beg you to pick them up and hold them. And people do that, and it kind of starts to make them imprinted on humans. Even if you only have them for a day, you want to be really careful not to do that. So what I do, this mallard had been held by a woman for a few hours, and I could not get him to settle down and look at himself and consider himself a duck. He kept wanting to be with people. So put him in front of the mirror, put the stuffies in there, and then I finally put a washcloth over him like a mother's wing, and he quieted right down. And you want to keep him in a space without human voices, so turn off the radio and the TV, dim the lights. You don't want it pitch black, but you want, no more than kind of a night light, and just pretty quiet there for him on his heating pad. And that calmed him down, and he slept almost through the night. He actually got up at 4:52 a.m. peeping. But they will will learn to be a duck pretty quickly. And the next morning, as soon as the Ogden rehab opened, I drove him up there, and he got to rejoin little guys just the same size as him. For morning transport to a wildlife rehabilitator, I just unplug the heating pad and then just take that whole box, ensure the top is secured, and transport him just like that. I take out the mirror so it doesn't accidentally fall on him. And just transport them right like that. If you've spent time sort of holding and cooing and playing with them, rehabilitators may be unable to take them or unwilling to take them. It's not in the animal's best interest to be conditioned to trust and rely on humans, and they're especially needy and prone to imprint on humans when they're that young, even overnight. So don't give them the chance. I will not speak English or other human languages to birds, but I will peep back to them to get them to calm down, because they will be calling and wondering where their mom is. So both baby ducklings and goslings kind of sound the same when they're that little, and they'll just constantly, and I will peep back to them a couple times, and they will stop and listen and think that might have been their parent. And if I don't keep doing it, they'll do it again, and I'll call back, and they'll learn to call and respond, because that's just what birds do in the wild. They'll say, hey, are you there? Yeah, I'm here. You there? I'm here. You there? I'm here. I'm here. Are you there? I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. Constantly. So if you do that and get them a little covered up and turn the light off, they will eventually quiet down and know that their instincts will kick in, that it's dark and I need to be quiet. Unfortunately for these three critters, raccoons, red foxes, and striped skunks, their rehabilitation options are almost non-existent in Utah. Because they are rabies vector species, Utah does not allow for them to be rehabilitated and returned to the wild. Animal control will likely refer you to the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources if you encounter one in need of help. For obvious reasons, you should be especially careful if you encounter one, and keep yourself safe. I think there is a rehabilitation option for these. It's not in Utah. The closest one is in Boise, Idaho, and it's called Animals in Distress. So if they can't help them, rehabbers in Utah do treat squirrels, badgers, ducklings, goslings, songbirds, hawks, eagles, owls, grebes, coots, beavers, marmots, bunnies, mergansers, prairie dogs, gray wolves, ibis, pelicans, chipmunks, falcons, frogs, salamanders, quail, turkeys, herons, avocets, dowitches, weasels, porcupines, loons, phalaropes, corvids, and more. So there's plenty of opportunities to help them rescue. In my opinion, I've seen some situations where, as sad as it is, death is better than suffering. And if that animal is really suffering, then you might have, I don't know about that animal, but in my opinion, when an animal is suffering, death can sometimes be better than other options. Comment or question?
It's probably not legal for that person to trap the skunk in the first place, right? They're not licensed to, you need some kind of...
I think it actually is. I don't know if that's legal, but I know there are exterminators that legally can trap them and dispose of them, and they will do that. Yeah, I don't know if the rando is supposed to be doing that.
I'm going to call the cops on you for trapping the skunk unless you open the door.
Yeah.
That might be a legal way
to get them to let it go. And they're so good, they eat a bunch of bad stuff in the hood, so it should be let go and leave them live and let live. And we're going to talk a little bit more about creatures that some people treat as pests coming up next here. So here in northern Utah, we have 2 licensed wildlife rehabilitation facilities. There's WRCNU in Ogden. It's a wildlife, I have to look at it every time I say it, Wildlife Rehabilitation Center of Northern Utah. And Second Chance Wildlife Rehabilitation in Price, or Helper. They are the only 2 state and federally licensed rehabilitation facilities near us that take most species that you'll find in Salt Lake City. There is a songbird rehabilitator that's licensed in Salt Lake City, which is listed in one of my handouts. And beyond that, there are a few more throughout the rest of the state that are on the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources handout that's available on the front table here. There are also domestic animal rescue sanctuaries like Jenks Sanctuary in Harriman and Friends in Need in Eagle Mountain. And there are a few other individuals like myself who rescue either single domestic species or a few species on a smaller scale. And also there's Wasatch Exotic Pet Care. It's a veterinary clinic for exotic pets in Sandy, which will sometimes take in songbirds for rehab. They will also, I think they might take in reptiles, and they'll also sometimes help stabilize or euthanize a wild animal if you find one that's suffering. So they're much closer. They have, hours that you can get to if you can't make it to Ogden before they close. They might be able to help you out. It's worth a call. And for sort of the small local people like me that you might, you wouldn't know who to call if you found a certain kind of animal, both of those wildlife rehabilitators do know. And some individuals like myself don't want to be known publicly. They would rather you call through one of the wildlife rehabilitators, and they'll put you in touch with, the woman who rehabs hummingbirds, or the lady who takes in, I don't know what, feral skunks, whatever it is. How can you as an individual help? One good idea is to keep a kit in your car in case you encounter an animal in need. It doesn't need to take up much space, and even the cardboard box or cardboard carrier can be flattened when it's not in use. I like to sort of include these items: a box with pretty small air holes, a few old towels. Those are good not only for lining the box, but also if you need to sort of capture something that might have wings or talons or claws. Sturdy gloves, small scissors, vet wrap. It's also called Coban. It's the kind that sticks to itself, but not to you. Gauze, and a leash in case, you might come upon a cat or a dog instead of wildlife. And a pen and paper for writing stuff down if you're talking to a rehabilitation person on the phone and can't, take notes yourself on your phone. Also, the one thing I think could help a lot of wildlife here in Salt Lake City is to be willing to transport an injured animal to Ogden or Price. I know that seems like a lot to add to a busy day, but their lives depend on it. And I will personally write you a sick note for work if you're transporting an animal to a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, where'd I go? What it's like. So here, these are some examples of sort of what it's like to do rescue work with non-traditional animals and wildlife. These are just a few emails I've received over the past week. And I just rescue ducks, and I'm pretty full, at over capacity right now. So there's not much I can personally do to take them in, but I still get about 3 to 5 questions or requests a day, although it sort of ebbs and flows. Emails, texts, phone requests to help animals can be overwhelming for a rescue, so I have a few tips. But first, let's just read through a few of these sample notes that I think are kind of interesting. So, first one says, I've seen you deal with a lot of duck issues. I've got a problem one of my ducks is having. Wondering if you have ever seen this before. His head stays crooked, but he eats and plays fine. He has a problem keeping up. The next one, hello, I'm on I-15 heading northbound between this address. There's a mother duck and babies on the freeway. I was unable to stop. My mom is calling animal control. Is there anything you can do to help? Hello, my mom has an injured female duck in her backyard. She has a broken wing and possible other injuries. What can we do to help? Hi, I have an urgent plea for help. I stopped on the freeway because of mother duck and babies. 3 have already been killed. I captured 5. It's so dangerous. I'm going to recommend you never do that. I know people who have been killed doing that. Please, just don't take the freeway in spring if you don't want to see that happen. Hi, we have a mama duck that left 2 ducklings on our property. One of them cannot walk. The other kept falling over. I have chickens, so I put them up so they can't attack. The ducklings were wet and cold, so I brought them in. I ground up oatmeal. I added water. Any suggestions or advice? What should I feed them in the morning? I was sent your information because I have a rooster that I love. He doesn't love my daughter. In fact, he hates her. He's a snuggler and has only one eye. I need to rehome him before my husband eats him. Blah, 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 blah. Can you, direct me to the right place? Someone here, a friend discovered an abandoned duckling while on a walk today. No mom or other ducklings in sight. She thinks it may have been an Easter gift situation, clearly imprinted on people, only a few weeks old. What's her best course? This one was the only one in this whole page that said, go to the wildlife rehabilitator? Yes. In the meantime, what should she do? And then the last one, I have 7 ducklings I found on the sidewalk. Their mother does not appear to be around. Can you help? So a couple things about these. I, having done this for 14 years, still make this mistake every time, which is I assume the person that I'm talking to has personally seen the animal and has, as much knowledge as a wildlife rehabilitator and knows exactly what it is. And there's a couple on here that were not the animals I thought they were. One person sent me a picture, but it didn't come through my phone, so I just assumed, oh yeah, it's probably an Easter gift, probably a domestic duck. I am totally full. Can you maybe see if someone else can take it? A few hours later, I logged on my computer to see if it found a place, and up popped a picture of not a 2 to 3 week old domestic duck, but a 1-day-old Canada gosling. And I was like, oh shit. Not gonna swear. So I'm like, I gotta get that gosling. It has to go. It cannot be made friendly. It's gotta go to the rehab. The other thing that people do far too often is don't tell me where they are. Who are you? Where are you? And since I lived in Seattle for a decade before this, half of the people who still contact me are in Seattle. They don't so that's one of the things you'll want to do to help is to think about clarity. So that's the next slide. How you can help. Be clear and brief. Where are you located? Where is the animal? What is your contact information? Is the situation urgent? I had a call the other day from a wildlife rehabber who told me that there's a situation on 9th East, but they said 9th West. They got the address wrong. And they were talking about there's kind of an old farm complex. They have a pond, and the ducks always every year lay on the other side of 7th East, and there's 9 lanes of traffic to cross. What they didn't say was, it's not an emergency right now, it just might be in the future. So I'd drop everything, run over there, and there's nothing happening anywhere. And that, was my own fault for not saying, is this happening right now? Is this an emergency? But people don't think to make that clear. Oftentimes I'll get requests to go check out something at the corner of 5th East and 17th South. And I'll go and it's a lot there. If you're looking for something this big, 17th South and 5th East is not a good enough description. So you're going to want to tell someone something like, it's at 5th East and 17th South on the northwest corner in front of the blue house and the hedge that wraps around the front of the porch about 3 feet back from the porch stairs on the left or north side, in the hedge on the ground. That's the kind of detail a rehabber needs or someone that you're calling and asking to drop everything and go help. That's what they need to really help that animal, is that level of specificity. I recently had someone on the Salt Lake City vegan page posted about a robin that looked like it might have been hit by a car, was bleeding from its eye. And I said, can you give me more information? And he's like, oh, I called animal control. I was like, animal control will take 9 hours to, respond. Can you give me more details? And he took a Google image map of the house and pointed an arrow to where exactly it was. And I drove there and it was still there, and I drove it to Ogden. So you can really make a difference if you are very specific in what you need help with. Dun, dun, dun. Watch out for online info. One of the things people, want to do when they find something that they need help is they want to post about it and see if they can get any help. They'll tag their friends, they'll tag rescues, they'll share it widely. And I have to say, some people have terrible ideas. Some ideas are downright dangerous. I've had people recommend cutting into duck or chicken feet without anesthesia, douse them in colloidal silver, use spackle to close up bleeding wounds. People have some really wacky ideas, and you'll really just, as the rehabber told me to tell you tonight, call them first before you do anything. Remember that the places you're calling, so there's animal control. That's a public good. That's a service for us. And there's Utah Division of Wildlife Resources, which is also something, our taxes support. Unfortunately, neither of those really their core focuses are not to help animals in the way that you are going to want to help that animal. So animal control exists at the intersection of where animals affect people. So if your neighbor's dog is barking and irritating you, that's an animal control situation. They would love to help all day long, but they have to prioritize those issues that are affecting the humans, the constituents that pay the taxes. Utah Division of Wildlife Resources, they do transport a lot of raptors down to Price or up to Ogden to help them if they are injured or hit by cars. But for a lot of what they do is investigating the nexus of hunters and fishermen and animals. So poaching or taking antlers out of season or hunting out of season. So they are also not they're not well enough resourced to answer every question or respond to every situation. So remember that when you are calling a rescuer, a wildlife rehabilitator, or someone like me, remember they are all volunteers. I've had people say to me, it's neat, you can make a living rescuing ducks. No one makes a living rescuing animals. It's all a love of animals and a passion. It only costs money, and it takes a great deal of time, and it's usually all volunteers who would mostly rather spend time with animals than talk to people. Animal people, please forgive them if they are not very good people. Give them a little bit of space, because the reason they spend all day with animals is because that's their choice to not spend time with people sometimes. And then lastly, be willing to transport. Please transport the animal yourself if you can. Please. Oftentimes people call me because they haven't done it before, and I'd love to talk you through it, but I'd love it even more if you just reached down, picked it up, put it in a box. There's no real special powers I have of doing that other than just having done it before. All it takes is just reaching down, picking it up, sticking it in a box. And that could be the difference of saving a life. Same goes for the babies. Limit your time handling the animals. A lot of times I get to pick up an animal and it's been passed around to 5 children by the time I got there, and it's near death from the stress and the trauma of being a wild animal that's been passed around like a party favor. People just don't think. They think it's a cute and a cuddly thing, but it's a stressed out, probably dehydrated, freaked out wild animal that is not a stuffed animal. So be very careful sort of handling them. Get them to care as soon as you can. More how you can help. Be careful not to over-tag or over-promise a rescue services. So a lot of times when someone will ask for help, I'll be tagged, Ogden will be tagged, Price will be tagged, a guy who shouldn't be rescuing wildlife in West Valley City will be tagged, and we'll all try to respond. And all of us at this time of year, especially in spring, this is the busiest time for rescuers. And it doesn't need every one of us responding to every situation. Any post that isn't an emergency, if there's all those other things they're tagged in, they're going to have a hard time finding the true emergencies with the animals that are in dire need if there's a bunch of other posts that they're tagged in that they need to look through, including things you'd love to share with rescuers, like cute videos of turkeys hugging people and, baby ducks running after people. Like, be careful tagging them, especially in spring, because it just is going to be something else they have to get through to find that one emergency. Never try to research and raise a wild animal yourself. Always turn wildlife over to the experts. It's both the legal and the ethical thing to do. Here in Salt Lake City, I think our options are so limited that I would encourage anyone who really wants to get into wildlife rehab to please do it. There are classes you can take at community college type settings. There's vet tech degrees you can get that will help you get there. And I know both the Ogden and the Second Chance would love volunteers who are more interested in helping out with that. And they'd work with you to train you if you were really committed to being a wildlife rehabilitator. Lastly, donations are paramount to rescue work. Rescue groups rely on donations to help keep animals fed, to keep the power on, the water running, to transport the wildlife to release sites, and more. Imagine if just one baby songbird eats $10 worth of food in a month. $10 from the time they come in and leave. They'll probably be there less than a month, 3 to 4 weeks. But if that takes $10 of food, I have a friend in North Carolina who runs a large rescue, and she right now has 400 rescued songbirds. So, and they keep coming, and some graduate out, and other ones come in. That's $4,000 just for basic food for just songbirds for just 1 month. That doesn't include any medication, supplies, heat, power, water, or transportation. It doesn't include veterinary bills or x-rays, surgeries, or exams. Rescue groups desperately need donations, especially in springtime. So definitely, if you bring someone an animal, think about bringing them a donation or asking your friends to skip a meal and give them a meal. I have a few sort of what not to do's that can really help animals and make an impact in your own yard. Avoiding these things can instantly improve the urban wildlife in your area. I don't know why, but a lot of sort of Martha Stewart-y type blogs and Pinterest stuff wants you to stick out a bunch of yarn material in your yard for birds to put in their nests. Please don't leave nesting material out for birds. I say don't do it at all. Some places will say, if you're going to put it out, put these things, but don't put these things. I just think it's a really bad idea. You're risking them the death. So a lot of the baby birds that come in, people will brush their hair and put their hair out for birds to put in their nests. And one human hair happens to human babies too. I forget what it's called, but it's like it becomes a tourniquet on a baby toe, and it's usually in a sock, and you don't know why your baby's crying. Same thing happens to baby birds. One human hair will take the leg or the foot off a baby bird far too easily. It goes for yarn, string, ribbons, balloons. Letting go of balloons in parks, also very damaging for birds and other wildlife, especially the babies. Let's see, what else? Don't feed bread to ducks. It's my personal mantra. Bread is terrible for ducks, especially ducklings in spring. Many of us loved, myself included, to feed ducks as kids and never realized how bad bread is for them. I'm sorry, it really is very bad for them. Bread lacks the basic nutrition, and it can result in metabolic bone disease, especially for little growing ducklings that will reach full size in about 3.5 to 4 weeks. So they will go from hatching to full grown in 3.5 weeks, and bread just does not give them what they need to make that growth happen fast and well. Wild ducks don't need any food support from humans at all. But dumped domestic ducks, which if you see white ducks at a park, they are dumped domestic ducks. They are not wild. They do need food support, but instead of bread, you can try birdseed or Cheerios. You can buy a bag of cracked corn or real waterfowl food from a farm feed store. Those are all better options than feeding bread. And another thing that will help is to never throw the food in the pond or the water source. That can rot and cause botulism, which is a very big problem here in Salt Lake City at Sugar House and Liberty Park and other parks in the area, because it rots and it takes the oxygen out of the water. And lastly, my little hummingbird friends, don't put dyes or substitute sugars in hummingbird feeders. Just use a simple 4 cups water to 1 cup sugar, plain white granulated sugar. None of this, well, I'm like granola, so I'm going to use organic. Organic sugar has too much iron content in it for hummingbirds. I've had someone use stevia. Oh, terrible. Don't do that. You just like put them on a diet. That's terrible. Don't do that. Just straight white sugar, and you boil it until it reaches the boil, and then you cool it to room temperature. This time of year, you can leave it out a little longer, but once the temperatures start to get hot, you want to change it every 2 to 3 days at most. You'll know if you're waiting too long when you check it. Also, you'll want to clean your other bird feeders that you have in your yard regularly to prevent disease from spreading among birds. And it is a bad year for diseases for animals this year. Wildlife rehabilitation facilities are predicting from West Nile to other communicable diseases with mosquitoes and things like that. So keep anything that you're using to help animals in your environment as clean as you can. What you can't do. It's too late. When it's too late, you may find yourself with wildlife all up in your grill, as you see, backyard grills, this spring, literally. Or you might find them in your chimney or your dryer vent, maybe your rain spouts or your porch awning. My advice to you is to wait it out, especially if it's birds. Once wildlife has moved into your space for spring, you need to suck it up and wait it out. That's my advice. It is illegal to interfere with migratory bird nests, and most birds will be gone in 3 weeks when their babies fledge from the nest. But after that, you'll want to prepare your home so you don't attract wildlife next season that you don't want. Prevention is going to be key. You want to cover and inspect those house vents or dryer vents or roof vents in March or earlier. Ensure your backyard grills are free of debris and properly stowed away so squirrels and birds don't nest in there. They're a great spot. When I took that duckling up earlier this week to Ogden, the woman who runs it told me that people call every day and say, "You won't believe what I just found in my backyard grill." And she's like, "I actually know exactly what you found in your backyard grill. Bring it in." My advice is to leave it there and wait it out. Prevention is much better than finding a raccoon having babies in your chimney. Trust me on that. Why it matters. Every life matters, from a human life to a bear to bobcat to a single mallard duckling or a songbird. None of us knows exactly how our own little spark of energy ended up in a human suit or a bird suit or a badger suit. So take care with every life you meet. Wildlife rescue also matters for another reason here in Utah. We have specific wildlife species populations that are especially vulnerable. There are several endangered species in Utah. Flycatchers, yellow-billed cuckoos, Mexican spotted owls, prairie dogs, sage grouse, and desert tortoises are all threatened or endangered. There are also 21 other sensitive species of birds, from hawks to swifts, and 19 sensitive mammals, from lynx to gray wolves to black-footed ferrets. And lastly, most of these animals suffer man-made problems. While some wild animals do succumb to natural accidents or predatory, death or injuries, so many of them find themselves in distress because of us, humans. From pesticides to rodenticides that make them sick, to lead shot from people who use them for target practice. Window strikes, car strikes, and roads can make their normal paths dangerous. Domestic dogs and cats can injure or kill urban wildlife, and often just trimming a tree or mowing your lawn can destroy their natural habitat. So since so many of their injuries and deaths are caused by us, I believe it's our responsibility to help them however we can. I have handouts here, thank you, from both the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center of Northern Utah in Ogden, the Second Chance Wildlife Rehabilitation in Price. I also have the statewide license holders handout from the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources, which includes that licensed songbird rehabilitator here in Salt Lake. There's a handout for help in identifying what to do if you find a baby bird that Wildlife Rehabilitation Center of Northern Utah provided to us tonight. And there's also informational handout from Friends in Need. They're located in Eagle Mountain. They do domestic rescue, much like Jenks Sanctuary does. And they have they help with Second Chance and Price. They will help you take in that animal if you cannot transport it all the way to Price. If you're down sort of in the southern end of Salt Lake or in Orem or Provo, they will take it at Eagle Mountain and overnight it and get it to Price the next day. So it's very kind of them to do that, and they work directly with that rehabilitator to provide that service. Jenks Sanctuary also is located in Harriman. I believe they're planning a move soon, so I've not listed them on my resources at this time, but you can always find them online, and I'm sure they'll answer your questions if they have time. Thank you, and I'll now open up any remaining time to questions. And scene.
Which Side Podcast is hosted and produced by Jordan Halliday and Jeremy Parkin of the Which Side Media Collective, with web design by Jordan Halliday and sound design by Jeremy Parkin. Booking by Mari Halliday. Go to whichsidecollective.org to check out the other shows in the collective. As always,
this is Brandon Mullins calling from Crossville, Tennessee. Fuck, shit, damn.